Throw all of your tier lists into the trash because the Mecha Break tournament changed everything. At least for me. Last weekend, some very wonderful people and I ran the first Mecha Break Western tournament. Their handles are in the description. We learned a lot from that tournament, including what rules need to be changed, how StartGG is a terrible website, and oh yeah, how Lumine has a 0% win rate. I've never seen anything like this. Like, how did that even happen? Did every team in the tournament decide to throw whenever they picked Lumine? Well, I'll be deep diving into the whys and hows of this tragedy, because honestly, the tournament results shook up all of my preconceptions about the open beta meta. In this video, we'll be doing a little scientific method, analyzing the tournament result, and then building a tier list from what we find. If you like the sound of that, then consider dropping your tier list in the comments right now, and then seeing how different mine is at the end. The first steps in applying the scientific method is typically observation and research, although I think we can gloss over the witnessing and playing of the game. I've been playing since the alpha and have always tried to deep dive into the meta of the game and see where the changes take the balance. In the newest version of Mecha Break, aka the open beta that some of you might have played, a large amount of the community will think the tier list should look something like this. I believe that a lot of the community put Ultra Heavies at the top, and it's pretty easy to know why. These mechs are heavy, they do a lot of damage, and they're very forgiving when mistakes happen. Strikers like the Tricera and Stego are immensely important on objectives. Hurricane and Inferno are also really good. Most players will have a good time on Ultra Heavies, and that's probably a good thing because they are beginner friendly and they give that very imposing mech feel. Therefore, I will be using this as a hypothesis of sorts. I will be asking the question, are we in an ultra heavy meta? The next step in the scientific method is to collect some data. Since this was a very scuffed tournament with no spectator mode or replay system, I had to go back and dig into every stream after the fact to log some information. I didn't get everything, but I got the picks, win rates, and MVPs of each striker. I also was looking at every game to make sure I sort of understand why things happen. With no surprise, Pinaka and Welkin dominated the top charts with high pick rates and win rates. Welkin also had the highest MVP score with 5 in total, tied with Narukami. The lowest of the bunch in data-wise is the before mentioned Lumine with 7 picks and 0 wins. However, what is unexpected is that a lot of the Ultra Heavies didn't do so well. Inferno was also down there with a miserable 26.67% win rate. Here are the stats for some of the rest of the strikers. Things to note are that Achilles, Panther, Sky Raider are right below Welkin in terms of wins and viability. Narukami has probably the solid 6th spot due to its high MVP rate, but that is probably because of player skill rather than the actual striker. Falcon is right behind Narukami in terms of identical picks and wins, but was of course less MVPs, probably because there are some things that aren't calculated in how MVP works, such as, well, how many shots are avoided, since Falcon is more of a dodge tank and you can't quite calculate the value of shots that are dodged. The ultra heavy defenders suffered pretty hard, with Hurricane being probably the best picked amongst the two, and Stego had an awful showing in coordinated pay with a lower than expected win rate despite the same amount of picks as Narukami. Alyssness was a niche pick, but it was worth it in those times. No MVPs for Alyssness though. And now that we have some data, we can begin to analyze. Let's talk about the best, the worst, and the unexpectedly good. I'd like to begin by exploring the top of the chart. Pyakka is a meta setter because it does all three of the Holy Trinity very well. It does damage, healing, and tanking, all in a mid-sized package. In this case, size doesn't matter, and Pyakka can absorb a lot of damage with its Shield Drone ability. And fun fact, the Shield ability actually takes more damage than Fluid Armor will or Health will. However, the shield is still about 60 to 80,000 more health for whatever teammate Pyakka decides to protect with it. This creates an interesting problem where now every damage dealer striker can absorb almost twice their HP in damage while being crowd control immune while being healed by Pyakka. Defenders are usually let down by slow movement speeds and relatively less damage than their more mobile counterparts. However, imagine an attacker with good survivability as any defender and mobility that stays the same. Now I hope you see why Pyakka creates some problems. It can make the most damaging striker in the game instantly better than a defender with one ability press. Oh, and just for an extra treat, yeah, the deployable walls are extremely good on objectives and counter those lockdown ultra heavies like Tricera and Stego. I can confidently say that a large part of why Welkin and Panther feel very dominant is because Pyakka was able to support them very well with its shield ability. Other top performing strikers also had strong gimmicks. Welkin, of course, can infinitely stun loop and spin attack people in its shield. Panther had insane mobility, energy, and shield recharge even after the nerf it got. Achilles is the only one in the game with a hard crowd control ability via the Stun Claw. Sky Raider can block all energy damage with its jamming missiles, on top of having already really good damage with all of his missile pods. Put all of these top 5 strikers on a team and you'll have something fantastic. What is not fantastic is the Lumine. The difference in power between the two supports that are in the open beta is immense. Lumine is only picked 7 times and won 0 times. Now that could be because players didn't make Lumine based teams. It also could be that there were no Lumine focused mains. However, the data shows that no team valued this support, and that Lumine dependent teams simply did not perform at all. Every time a Lumine team went up against a Pyakka team, they would lose because of the difference in support functions, assuming equal playing skill. Lumine's healing is of course more widespread and situationally better than Pyakka's. However, it simply does not have the damage or anti-tank potential that Pyakka has. Lumine also is a very good support for the heavies because it can grant them mobility, but in this case, the attacker focused meta have already very mobile units that, well, this Angel Lumine can't really support that well. Now, let's talk about why the heavier mechs did much worse than what people expected. Some might be saying, hey, if Pyakka can add extra HP, wouldn't the ultra heavies be really broken? They kinda are on one specific map, Mercury Shipyards, because all they have to do is sit on the objectives. And earlier in the tournament, probably like the round of 16 and round of 8, Stego, Tricera, Inferno, and Hurricanes were grabbing MVPs. They were doing really well. But when it came to the semifinals and finals, there were no such MVPs to be found. And here's the thing for the ultra heavies is that they've already got really forgiving health, but less mobility, of course. And Tricera already has the most health points in the game, Plus, it has the extra shielding from its ability and healing drones for itself. Tricera is the most survivable mech in the game. The extra HP Pinaka is going to provide to a Tricera isn't going to be as worthwhile on it than giving extra HP to a Falcon. The Falcon's whole kit is balanced around being low health, evading damage, and then pumping out as much as you can. When it's invading, Falcon can't really put out as much damage as it can. Suddenly, giving it a massive shield would give the Falcon so much of a boost than to a Tricera that's also still just gonna be slow, but incredibly tanky already. Ultra heavies, such as Stego, Inferno, Hurricane, the other ones would also favor a mobility or even a damage boost over more HP to deal with things like flyers and snipers. It's not just the support gap that is affecting ultra heavies. Fundamentally, flyers and snipers do exceptionally well against heavies due to the elevation and range. Pinaka just can't help the heavies as well as it can help the attackers. And this problem is pretty much why the attackers are really dominant in this tournament, at least. The other fundamental problem is what I like to call the "you're too slow." Mecha Break has these kind of random respawn points sometimes on a lot of its 6v6 maps. This makes it really hard to regroup and reorganize sometimes because you're not spawning in a room so you can wait for people to push out. You're spawning on top of the battlefield, dropping in via jet boosting. So this means a lot of games, despite having 6 people on it, because of the map is so big, because of the map have these random spawn points sometimes, a lot of engagement would be 2v2 or 3v3. Heavies are usually really bad at 2v2 or 3v3s on a wide map. These smaller engagements require damage, they require mobility, and they require a bit of, skill expression. Snipers and flyers are really good at what we call third partying if you played any battle royales. But heavies are usually only good when they're standing right on the point. In fact, heavies often miss engagements due to their speed, or they can't push together and link up with everybody because, again, their speed. This is where Lumine would be able to help them, but again, no team was really picking Lumine. Stego and Inferno especially need uninterrupted time to do its damage. If a melee is on Stego or Inferno, they just have a really hard time. Stego, some people might think that it can just lock down and do the shield and it'll be fine, but Stego literally has to pack up in order to target the melee if they get around, and it wasn't very hard to get around the Stego for the majority of melee players in the tournament. So yeah, the ultra heavies, they do a lot of damage, they tank a lot, but they also need a great line of sight and space in order to do that damage. In the battlefield maps, there's also cover, there's also a lot of places for mobile mechs to take advantage of, like those crystals, or just ducking behind a hill or some pillars and stuff like that. Snipers, in this case, are much better than ultra heavies because they can free aim to avoid those sort of lock-on disruptions, but heavies cannot. The one place that heavies are really good at is on objectives. But again, of course, Pinaka is really good at countering these ultra heavies by dropping the shield to block their line of sight or just directly on them to deal damage. And Pinaka's shotgun absolutely shred Tricera and Stego. In the finals of the tournament, Falcon Punch versus Gun Bunnies, we saw how the heavy composition suffered. They could not deal with Falcon Punch's Narukami at all. And Falcon Punch didn't even run a single tank for most of the games that they played in the tournament. So, and they're the team that won. So really, we don't see Ultra Heavies as that competitive as picks in high-level play. The most surprising fact that came out of this is probably that Falcon did really well in the tournament. We saw top-tier Falcon players push the striker to the extreme. When we saw Falcon, they usually did very well in these double air unit plus one sniper compositions. This composition works in dominating the air game since most teams chose to only use one air unit. And despite popular belief, Falcon has some good damage when it can survive. And it definitely survived if you have the air dominance and when you have Pinaka supporting you. In the hands of good players on very specific maps, the Falcon did really well, and it's a contender for the 6th spot on the tier list versus Narukami. You know, after this tournament, I started picking up Falcon, and I wouldn't say that it is bad for competitive play, just very, very hard to play well. It really requires some specific setups, and you need to get a bit smarter with it. Alright, so at the end of the video, it's time for the conclusion. Let us build some tier lists, one for competitive and one for casual. For the competitive tier list, Pinaka is obviously going up on top. Number 1 slot, no contest, is just that good. Pinaka shaped the entire open beta meta. That's just the truth. And I think it really, really needs some changes in order to not be so dominant next time. Welkin will follow shortly after, as it is just a disgusting, spinning, killing machine. These two will be the only, probably 2 S-rank strikers that I have on this list. And based on the tournament stats, the ranking will go something like this. It'll go Panther, Achilles, Sky Raider, these are like the top of the tops. Narukami and Falcon, you can kind of interchange one of these for the 6th slot. Hurricane is the best ultra heavy because of its pick rate and utility. Tricera is just slightly shortly behind Hurricane in my opinion. Stego, fantastic damage, but unfortunately did not perform in this tournament due to being countered by coordinated teams. Not to mention, Stego needed the most positioning help out of any striker due to his missiles, and when you're getting pushed around by enemy melee or flyers, it's really hard to have that perfect condition. Elisnus was shown to be a solid pick on Sky City due to its multiple lives, but other than that, on every other map, it seems like the performance of it was outshined by other melee strikers. There were times where people were picking 3 melee compositions, but those are the rarities, and Elisnus definitely did not have any MVPs, so yeah, I don't think it's really deserving of a top spot here. I do think they need to look at the 4 lives mechanics of the Elisnus because it's 100% bringing it down. Inferno is a sad boy. It did really well against Ultra Heavies as a tank buster, but as soon as the more mobile and lightweights started to play, it couldn't keep up due to its really unwieldy abilities and terrible main weapon. Like, Inferno probably has one of the worst main weapons in the entire game right now. It has bad fire rate, decent damage, but terrible tracking as well. Finally, Lumine was truly unplayable. Nobody wanted to play Lumine. Nobody played Lumine well. It was just a bad unit. Now, that was the ranking system based on tournament stats. I will be making a few adjustments here based on my own intuition for the casual tier list. I think that everything worked in a non-competitive setting. Just make sure you have 1 healer on every team, and then everything sort of worked in the normal queue. We had Inferno player rise up to the highest rank of Legendary. We had Listeners up in Masters. We had Falcons, and Sky Raiders, and Snipers, and Heavies, and Stego players. Everybody was up there. And you should be playing what you consider is fun. As long as you do that, you'll climb the ranks. I've seen plenty of Luminate MVPs, and I've personally spent the majority of the test on the Listeners. So I just wanted to get the statistics out there for the competitive scene so that next time the Mecha Break Balance team will have a good idea to where to take it. I don't want you to use these statistics and just say to your friend, hey, your opinion sucks. So I know it's gonna be more fun next time because this open beta was very fun, and I hope they take the data that they've gotten from here and fix up some various problems. I cannot wait to see how the new strikers will shake up the meta next time. But until then, just keep your favorite striker in mind, and thank you for watching. Please get some water, touch some grass, and I'll see you next time. Ciao!